Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris and I am making this video for folks who are living with transits right now. So especially if you have a transit going on with the outer planets, Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune, this is for you. I wanted to make this and offer a little bit of extra support during these times because they are mighty times. And part of the reason why they are mighty times is really to do with the outer planets. So Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are talking with each other. They've really been talking with each other since that end of July, especially the intensity of August eclipse season. The reason this eclipse season has been so powerful / also tumultuous for folks and the collective is to do with what the outer planets are doing. And they are breaking down, dissolving, dismantling established paradigms for the creation of new paradigms. And they're working together to do this. This is really heightened right now. And as we enter into 2026, that said, the next years are us kind of coming into creating new paradigms. That really is heightened with in February when Neptune and Saturn are conjunct. That's what a lot of us are looking at and talking about. And so on the one hand, there's the way this is happening in collective, and then there's how it's happening for and with you personally. And so what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about how, if you say, for instance, are having a Pluto transit right now, if Pluto, who's in those early degrees of Aquarius, is opposite your sun or square your moon or is conjunct your Mars, okay? And I'm going to talk generally about the themes that can be coming up with each of these outer planets that you can kind of sit with and apply to your life and however that's happening. And I'm not going to go through, I'll give some examples, but I'm not going to do every possible example. Otherwise, we would be here for a long time. But just naming some of the themes as we're journeying with these outer planets, because if you have, either really looking at a conjunction, an opposition, or a square with Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune right now, there is a major process underway. And this, especially if it's talking to something personal in your chart, okay? If you happen to be in your Pluto square Pluto, then this is just a Pluto square Pluto is a major transit that we all have between 38 and 40. And so, however these planets are talking with you, if you have a personal transit with one, but most likely if you have it with one, then you have it with more than one because they are all talking to each other, which means they're talking to more in your chart. So, for instance, if you had Pluto conjunct your Mars, then your Mars is also trine Uranus, okay? And that's significant because on the one hand, there is deeply, deeply transformative energy going on with that conjunction. But at the same time, Uranus has been trining it, wanting to bring an awakening that's empowering at the same time. But that said, it's really important when we're working with the outer transits. Sometimes, we love our rules, don't we? And people are like, trine good, square bad. Let all that go. Okay, it really just, especially that squares are bad, that oppositions are bad, it's not helpful. It's not helpful especially if you're working with astrology for healing. And it's not helpful if you're shifting into new paradigms in which we are able to really get past the binary of good and bad in our interpretive framework that is a product of kind of a very patriarchal understanding of knowledge making. And what we're looking for is how these archetypal resonances are surging in the psyche, body, life to support your transformation, evolution, and ultimately healing. Now that said, doesn't always feel like healing in the moment that it's happening. And I think one of the most important things when we're having a transit, especially with Pluto or Uranus or Neptune, it is not until we are out of the transit, until we have at least a 1.5 degree to 2 degree orb, that we usually start really understanding a bigger picture of, oh, that's what was happening to me. That's what was going on, right? We kind of think we know that when we're in it, especially if we're working with astrology. But the truth is, it's really once we're out of it that we get that wisdom that comes with the retrospective gaze. And we're like, all right, that's what happened. So firstly, if you are having a personal transit with one of the outer planets, there is something that's happening in your life, in your sense of self, in your relationships, in your work, in your vocation. It depends what house it's in. That's happening at this time. It was always going to happen right now in this co-creative matrix that we are a part of, that evolutionary astrology suggests is not happening by coincidence. And so one of the pieces and frames that I think is helpful for folks that are having personal transits and they're difficult is that whatever new realities are coming, they need you. They need you in whatever version of yourself is going to emerge out of the transit. And these aren't isolated transits. They're part of the collective dismantling. And that just makes sense. Because no matter how radical or progressive or how much we dedicate ourselves to unlearning, these ideologies of power over are the fabric of social connection and institutions. And so we internalize them. There is always more unlearning to do. I say this as someone that has been unlearning them professionally, personally, in so many different realms, that has made a living teaching unlearning them. Like, it's never done. There's always more ways that those power over ways of treating ourselves, especially in our internal dialogue, that we have to unlearn. And the outer planet transits are wonderful for this. They really are, because they disrupt, they interrupt, they disrupt, they dismantle something that isn't going to be taken forward. But they do that in very different ways, and that's what I'm going to focus on now. So if you have a Pluto transit going on right now, so if, say, Pluto's conjunct a personal planet, or Pluto, or if you're in your Pluto square Pluto, or if Pluto's opposite something or square something, I'm going to focus on those kind of what can be dynamic and bring up tension. There's something that's going through a death and rebirth. That is what transiting Pluto does. It is death and rebirth, right? So when Pluto squares or is opposite or is conjunct Mercury, it is literally a dismantling and a death and rebirth and transformation of how we understand and point. It's how we think, it's how we communicate. But it usually also really goes to how we understand ourself. I find that Pluto, in attentional, wants to bring up dynamic energy and shift with Mercury is usually transforming our narrative of self. And then from there, it goes into how we understand and how we think. And they can be wonderful transits for writing. They can be wonderful transits for memoir. Memoir inspired autofiction, because that actually really works with the energy of what Pluto doing with Mercury is doing. And then as we emerge out of that, we're going to see the world differently. We're going to understand it differently, and we're going to communicate differently. But there is a death and a rebirth going on, right? Or for instance, if you had Pluto opposite your sun, your sense of self right now is going through a massive death and rebirth, or just square your sun or conjunct your sun. Okay. And so whatever Pluto, if you have a Pluto transit, whatever it's talking to is inviting, and they do invite us. It doesn't always feel like an invitation. Sometimes we have to learn the language of the outer planets, but they're inviting it's inviting a transformation, a death and rebirth. And one of the things you can reflect on is how, firstly, this is Pluto in Aquarius. So this is all about something that needs to become more authentic in yourself. Now, it's Pluto, and Pluto is our unconscious. And so there's something in whatever it's talking to in your chart that unconsciously has had a bit of a status quo. And Pluto now says it's time, that sense of identity, that sense of purpose, whatever archetype it's talking to, it's lived the life as it was meant to take you thus far. And now there's a transformation going on. And when we have a Pluto transit, the best thing we can do is rest, because Pluto transits are usually exhausting. Secondly, is to allow the transformation. Now, Pluto usually, that type of transformation does usually bring up grief, and part of grief is negotiating and resisting, so that's all normal, right? But to actually step aside and recognize that something transformative is happening, you might not know what it is, you don't need to. It certainly is aligned with a massive transformation in the collective, but bringing the focus into you personally, especially if you have personal transits going on, you most likely need to shift your gaze away a little bit, at least from the media, because there's a massive transformation going on within, and you need your energy for these. Okay, and walking with it, sitting with it, making art with it, allowing the transformation, and knowing that you're in process. When we're in deep transformative process, we don't need to be making the crystal clear 5-year plan, figuring this out. We need to be making sure that we ate enough food, that we're drinking enough water, that we're getting enough sleep. When you're in a deep Uranus transit, those are things that are really important, because that's going to ground you. And meeting your authentic self, because there's something about authenticity that's emerging here. Okay, if you have a major Uranus transit going on right now, so let's say Uranus is squaring your sun, or you're in your kind of early 40s and you're having your Uranus opposition, or Uranus is conjunct your moon, okay? Now, one of the important things, and this could be either at the very final degrees of Taurus or Scorpio, or Leo or Aquarius, if you had Uranus in a square opposition or conjunction, or you have something at those first degrees of Gemini, okay? Then there is something that is awakening. Uranus is about awakening, and it is awakening something about your more authentic self, okay? There's themes that emerge because Pluto is in Aquarius. Aquarius is connected to Uranus. So both of these outer planets are bringing up themes around authenticity. Now, Uranus, however, brings radical change. And it depends what it's talking to, but when we have a Uranus transit, for instance, if you are in your Uranus opposition, this can bring radical life changes. They can be things that you really weren't expecting. They can come seemingly out of nowhere. But the important thing with all Uranus transits, especially Uranus opposition, is that Uranus also connects us to higher mind. And so when you have a Uranus transit, you really want to pay attention. Do you start getting little drop-ins of visions of yourself doing something? Maybe it's writing a book, maybe it's working at a certain place, maybe it's in a type of relationship, maybe it's just walking in Greece or something, you know, whatever it is. But Uranus does open these kind of visionary glimpses, and if there's themes that are reoccurring, you want to pay attention to them. They're probably information from that interconnected web that is going to weave itself into your life. Now, one thing about Uranus is Uranus bends time. Uranus is various timelines. So you also don't need to think it has to happen right away. You want to trust the process. But there might be something about that vision that's opening to you that does give you little breadcrumbs to work with, journal with them, invite them to co-create with them, and just see what's happening. But ultimately, a Uranus transit is about awakening a more authentic self. And that's going to be archetypally whatever it's talking to. If it's your sun, it's your sense of self, how you want to creatively activate your personality and drive in this life. If it's your moon, if Uranus is talking to your moon, that's a tender transit. It's like a lightning bolt comes in to your most intimate self. Okay, and so that lightning bolt, especially if you have it in a fixed sign, so if it's in Taurus or Scorpio or Aquarius or Leo, then it might open something You might reclaim understanding of yourself, memories, soul memories, life memories, intergenerational things from childhood. Uranus talking to the moon is radically awakening your inner sense of self. There are things that have potentially not been worked with, seen, owned, and Uranus wants them owned so that you can be more authentic in the inner core of yourself, and then that is going to feed yourself moving forward. And again, how is whatever Uranus is waking up with you something that, especially with Uranus entering Gemini, your community needs, whether that's a small community of 5 people or 25 people. You know, it's all of these roles. The outer planets are transpersonal. They're opening up roles for us into the realities that are coming. And so Neptune is the other outer planet. One more thing about Uranus, actually, that I want to say. If you have Uranus talking to something because you have something placed at the first degree of Gemini, right, or Sagittarius, or Virgo, or Pisces, then you also are in a Uranus-Sedna transit, okay? Uranus is only going to be with you for about a year or so. Sedna's there a bit longer. And so if your transit is coming, and again, Sedna has to be a very close orb for it to be a transit with us. But if Sedna and Uranus are talking to something in your chart at the same time, it is not just awakening that authentic self. It's an intergalactic survivor, transformative voice, self, identity coming through. Especially if you do journey with complex trauma, if you do journey with those liminal realms of experience that can't always be expressed in ordinary language, not because we are deficient, because that is the genius of our mind body, and it's a survival mechanism that doesn't have to be altered, despite what Western patriarchal psychiatry would offer. It is Sedna archetypally is awakening a courageous, wise, transformative power within you. Now, that sounds great, but it's a lot, especially when it's with Uranus. So you absolutely, any Uranus transit, you absolutely want to take care of your nervous system. It's essential. You need to work with the mind-body practices that calm you, that nurture you, that help you ground, because it is a lot of energy, but it is transformative, and oh, does the collective need you if Sedna's waking something up. Okay, and now Neptune. If you have a major Neptune transit going on, Neptune is on its truest archetypal level, spiritualizing something. There is something, you know, especially Neptune, if it's conjunct something, and especially right now, it's Neptune and Saturn. Okay, now they're a little bit, Saturn's going to go back to 25 degrees. But if you've got anything from 29 degrees of Pisces squaring or opposite that, or you've got something at the first or second degree of Aries or Libra or Cancer or Capricorn, this birthing of a new reality of Neptune and Saturn is happening very personally for you. And so this is both a spiritualizing and a total restructuring. So if it's talking to your sun, and here you might really not know what's going on, okay, for a little while. With Neptune and Saturn, you're not supposed to know. Any major Neptune transit, I always describe a major Neptune transit in readings as when you're hiking and it's really foggy out and you don't, like, you know, you're on the trail most of the time, not always. And then all of a sudden you kind of come around a bend and the fog clears and there's just a gorgeous vista and it's so beautiful. And in the Neptune transit, it clears and it's like, I know the purpose of my soul's journey. I know everything that I've ever needed to know. It's that quintessential epiphany moment. And then the fog comes back in and then you're like, oh, wait, I know that I knew something, but I don't totally know what that meaning, you know, that's a Neptune transit, and it just ebbs and flows, and every time that vision and that glimpse is a little more clear, or just your intuition is more clear, because with Neptune we're seeing with the intuition. And that's the Neptune transit journey. So you just want to, you really want to accept that you're in process if you have a Neptune and or Neptune Saturn transit going on. And also, there is most likely a part of yourself that you're saying goodbye to, especially with the astrology of Neptune and Saturn right now. Okay. And, you know, also if you're in your second Saturn returns, whether that Saturn is somewhere between 25 and 29 degrees of Pisces, or it's moving into Aries at the first beginning degrees, your Saturn return is timed with this dismantling and this rebirthing. So second Saturn return, or if you're in your first Saturn return, this is about you coming into a new stage of maturity with your second Saturn return. It is about really claiming the bone mother wisdom in a new way that's going to carry you forth into the rest of your life. And this is going to be new structures. Most likely you are coming into new ways of understanding, seeing the world, seeing yourself. There is some type of spiritual rebirth going on. Rebirth is a process. It's aligned with a very complicated collective process. And you don't rush it. You don't rush that rebirth, okay? Allowing it, because in this metaphor of rebirth, it's going to happen in its perfect timing. Okay, it's going to happen in its perfect timing, and just allowing the process. Sometimes we have to intervene, not in this situation. Okay, so it is spiritualizing, and there is something about your intuition in a Neptune transit that is being rebirthed, upgraded, coming forth, going to help you to see with your intuition, to know and trust what the rational mind is actually not capable of knowing and trusting. The rational mind can riff off of that intuition, and it can create gorgeous books, art, treaties, philosophies. That's fine. They're not supposed to be separate. The mind and the intuition and the body are all entwined. But with Neptune, whatever it's talking to, it is bringing your intuition. Like if it's your sun, there's a spiritual rebirth going on around your whole sense of self, and Saturn is dismantling what your sense of self has been as Neptune, the structures of it, as Neptune dissolves it. Like, it's messy. You might be spaced out a bit. You might not know what you want to do. It's going to shift, you know, but it's a process, and it depends where your sun is or your moon or whatever it's talking to. But just allowing the process. That's the most important thing for the outer planets. Okay, hopefully there is something in there that was helpful, supportive, and sending lots of love to your journeying. Be well.